So we're going to look specifically at our A, H, and K values to see how they're going to determine where our parabola is and what it looks like. And then we're going to use clues to kind of put a parabola in the right place. So let's talk about our A value first. So when our A value is greater than 0, that makes it a positive number. And what we know is when A is a positive number, our parabola is going to open up. Now, A does not tell us anything about where our vertex is going to be located, but it does tell us that our parabola is either going to be wide and compressed or it'll be skinny and stretched, but the positive value means it's going to open up. If A is less than 0, that means it's a negative number, and negative numbers are going to open down. Okay, if we have a negative A value, our parabola will open down. Now let's talk about H. Our H value controls the movement of the vertex either to the left or to the right. So if our H value is 0, what that means is it doesn't move at all, left or right, and our vertex will be located on the y-axis, somewhere along this blue line here. Now if H is positive, if H is greater than 0, then we know our vertex is going to move to the right. So our vertex will be located somewhere on this side. And finally, if our H value is less than 0, that means the vertex moves to the left. And so again, the vertex of our parabola will be somewhere on this side of the y-axis. Last but not least, let's look at K. Again, K controls our vertex moving either up or down off that x-axis. So if K equals 0, then it didn't move at all, and we know the vertex will actually be located on our x-axis. If K is greater than 0, we know that the vertex is going to move up, and it will be located above our x-axis. And finally, if our K value is less than 0, we know the vertex will move down, and so our vertex will be somewhere below here. Okay, now those are just some general things for us to think about. What we're going to do is we're going to use these concepts while we try to figure out where these parabolas could be. And I'm going to tell you this, there's more than one way to draw these parabolas. They just have to fit the clues that we're given. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to break it down one at a time. So this first clue that I have right here says the vertex is located in the second quadrant. So the second quadrant, the way we number these quadrants, we've got quadrant 1 is our first quadrant right here, and then we label them counterclockwise. So our second quadrant would be located, hang on for 1 second, let me clear that up. Our second quadrant would be located here. So what we know is our vertex is somewhere in this quadrant. Okay, my second clue says it's a maximum value, my vertex is a maximum value, and it's 3. So the highest point of this parabola is going to be at 3. Now it doesn't tell me any more, so it could be anywhere. My vertex could be somewhere along this line where the maximum value is 3. We're just going to pick that. The maximum value is 3, so I'm going to say here. And then finally, the last clue that we have, it says there are 2 x-intercepts. 2 x-intercepts. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a parabola. It doesn't tell me about how it's stretched or compressed or anything like that. We're just drawing a sketch. So we've got our vertex in the second quadrant. This is my maximum value of 3, and we have 2 x-intercepts. Now that we have a sketch to look at, what we're going to do is we're going to answer these questions. A is greater than, less than, or equal to 0. So we have to look at our parabola and I say, okay, well my parabola opens facing down. If my parabola opens facing down, that means my A value has to be negative. And if it's negative, that means A is less than 0. And now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to look at my H value and figure out, is it greater than, less than, or equal to 0? So when I look at this, this is where my parent function would be located. I see that my vertex has moved to the left. And then if it moves to the left, that means my H value has to be negative, which again means H would be less than 0. And down here it says, how do you know? H is less than 0 because my vertex moved to the left. And when it moves to the left, that means it's negative. I'm going to do the same thing here for my A value. I know A is less than 0 because the parabola opens down. And it opens down when the A value is negative. So in order to be negative, it has to be less than 0. And then finally, let's look at K. According to this, my vertex has moved up 3 places. When it moves up, that means it's a positive number. So if K is positive, it has to be greater than 0 because positive numbers are greater than 0. Again, how do I know? My vertex moved up. If you want to be specific, you can say 3 places. Okay? So let's take a look at this next one. I think you're getting the hang of it now. So clue number 1 says the vertex is a minimum. Okay? It doesn't tell me anything yet. I just know my vertex is a minimum. So in my head, I'm going to think, okay, this parabola is going to be shaped like this. Okay? My axis of symmetry is where x equals 3. Okay, x equals 3. That is going to be, right there. Okay, that's my axis of symmetry. So if my vertex is going to be somewhere along that axis of symmetry, I know it's going to be somewhere on this blue line. Again, I can't really draw anything yet. I don't have enough information because I know it's a minimum. Maybe it goes here, okay? Maybe it's down here. I'm not really sure. I don't have enough information to really judge that yet. So we're going to look at our last clue. And my last clue says there are no x-intercepts. So now I got to put all this information together. My vertex has to be on this blue line. I know my vertex is a minimum, and I know I can't have any x-intercepts. So that leaves me a bunch of different possibilities. One of them is right here, okay? This parabola could be anywhere where my vertex is on that blue line, and it is above my x-axis. And I know that because I can't have any x-intercepts. If I put it below that x-axis, it would cross the x-axis, and I'd have 2 x-intercepts. So now that I have my sketch, let's go back and answer these questions. Okay, my vertex is a minimum. I see that right here. That means, in order this case, my parabola opens up. In order for my parabola to open up, my a value has to be positive, which means a has to be greater than 0. And I know that because my parabola opens up, and in order to open up, it has to have a positive value. All right, let's look at h. My h value moves to the left or the right. So again, for my parent function, I moved over here to the right. Moving to the right means I moved positive 3 places. That means h has to be positive, so it's going to be greater than 0. How do I know? Because my vertex moved to the right. And then last but not least, let's look at that k value. My k value moved up. It only moved up 1 place, but it moved up. That means it's a positive number, because positive numbers move us up. So again, k has to be greater than 0. And how do we know? Because my vertex moved up. So it's really important when you're doing these problems that you use the 3 clues to draw your sketch first, and then think about how did that sketch change and what does it mean in terms of your numbers being greater than 0 or less than 0. It's really helpful if you go back and look at these notes you have, because this will help you. If you drew a parabola like right here, okay, with your vertex over here, then you know that your h value has to be greater than 0 because of what it says on the top. So don't forget you have those resources and use them when you're doing these papers.